welcome. Is this your first time today? Yeah, okay, so most of us. So let me tell you a few safety things about the building before we kick off. The first one is that there's a step that runs underneath the building. You may have noticed that when you walked into the espresso area over there. Be really careful of that. You need to cross over that to get to the bathroom as well, which is just on that second exit there. See that? We're going to have lots of opportunities for bathroom breaks today. I'm trying to time it right so we're not in the middle of going through something, but you're welcome to go through at any stage. I guess one last safety thing, if there's an alarm today, which is really rare, we don't really have our alarm go off very often, but it's most likely the fire alarm. And in the event of that going off, I'll just gather you as a group. We'll head downstairs if there's a fire, of course. And the fire exit is the front door where you came in, just so you know. Cool. Questions about that? It's all pretty straight, pretty safe. Watch out for hot stuff today as well. We're going to be using a lot of, obviously, hot components in the coffee machines to try not to burn yourself. So that's pretty much it about safety in the building. We've already introduced ourselves, so it's nice to hear everyone's experience. And with that knowledge as well, I can tailor today's session more or less to your individual needs. So let me take you through how I'm going to do that, and also a little bit about what's in today's session as well. This is what we'll start with. We're just going to stay on the couches for 15 minutes and talk about coffee as a product, what we have to do to handle to get the best results. So that'll be a really quick discussion. And then the main part of today is going to be spent with you guys at the machines producing espresso, and we're really going to focus on how to retain high quality results today. And that's what I hope you walk away with a really good idea of how to do that if you didn't already. So to do that, we'll focus on three main things. We'll start with the techniques required to do that. So we'll look at techniques for dosing, using the grinder. We'll look at how to distribute the coffee, so how we have to handle it and prepare the shot before we can. Then of course camping technique as well. So technique-wise, we're going to cover all that stuff and leave you guys nice and competent in that area. We'll look at some adjustments today, and the things we'll adjust and experiment with are our dose, so the amount of coffee we're using, and our grind setting. So the long and short of it is we want you guys to know how to adjust those, and also what they do, what's the whole point of adjusting them to. And then finally we'll finish off by making some measurements, and the things we'll be measuring today all constitute an espresso recipe. So we'll look at timing our shots, we'll weigh our dosage, and we'll also be weighing our beverage, so weighing the espresso. And there's a couple of reasons why we do that. We'll go into that in a sec. Technique-wise, some of the other things we'll do today while we're learning technique is manually pouring our espresso, and we're going to focus on how things look as an espresso is extracting and how that correlates to flavour. So in addition just to watching our shots and getting a feel for how things should look generally, we'll also be tasting and backing up some of the things that we're saying today. For our adjustments, as we're making adjustments to dose and grind, we will talk about why we're consistent with some things, why we adjust other things, and I'll show you how to go about that as well. And most importantly, we're going to frame all this stuff with a bit of methodology, and that's where the measurements come in. We've got some numbers to aim for. It's a really easy way of standardising things across a bunch of baristas or teaching new people what to obtain. But importantly for us today, measurements are just going to help us see when we're getting variance, and then how that variance affects the quality of things in the cup. And that's hopefully what we'll take away from this first section. So as you can see, that's 2 hours, so that's the bulk of today's session. A much smaller part of today is milk, and this is more of an outline of what we want to teach people about milk. And if you do want more detailed milk training, we do it in another class, which is the latte art techniques class. So if you're interested in milk, I'll come back to that. The things we're going to cover today are how to achieve high quality results with a lot of accuracy, and we're really going to focus on presentation. The actual skills we'll focus on are firstly steaming the milk. We'll be then splitting that milk up in an attempt to make two really consistent foam heights on two different coffees. And of course we'll look at the pouring technique with a focus on presentation as well. So not too much on the latte art today, this will just be the basics of steaming and then achieving those really great results, and then achieving some fairly high quality results in the cup as well. Make sense to you guys? The final part of today, I'll be picking your brain and asking you what you got out of the course, maybe make some recommendations for some further training. And Of course, we'll be cleaning the machines as well, which is everyone's favourite part. But what I'd like to do with you today is just take you through all the different parts of the machine that affect coffee quality, and we'll focus on cleaning those really thoroughly. So good stuff to do in the cafe. So that's a big outline. Is that pretty much what you were hoping to get out of today's session? You can tell it's pretty limited, very espresso focused. For new users like yourself, we usually pair this class up with workflow and troubleshooting, the next course, and those are sort of two beginners courses together. For you more experienced guys, today should just be a good opportunity to touch base with some of these things that you may already be competent in, and maybe get some more knowledge, some theory stuff as well. So let's kick off by talking about this, coffee as a product. So for us as a roastery, we're used to thinking about coffee just like this. Coffee is an organic product, it's a fruit, and it's a farmed product too. Here's what it looks like growing on a tree, if you've never seen that before. Has anyone ever been to a farm or seen coffee trees up close? Yeah. When did you go to the farm?
In Colombia.
Oh, super cool. Awesome.
Yeah. I didn't really understand what they were saying, speaking Spanish.
Yeah, okay, fair. And speak Spanish, that makes sense.
I sort of saw the whole process of it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Really? Good to see that up close.
Yeah, it was.
Maddie, have you had a chance to pop to any farms? So you've seen that, seen a little bit too?
Yeah.
Beautiful, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot to it. Obviously, being a farm product, there's a lot of processing involved. There's a lot to do with picking. Yeah, we won't cover that too much today. We do have other courses for that, so ask me if you're interested. But once that cherry has been farmed and it's been picked, and then gets processed and gets prepared for export, most of the coffee that we find in the industry looks just like this. So when it's processed, it's put through a pulper, and then that coffee is washed. So the vast majority of coffee that you find, high quality coffee in Australia, is that process washed process. Essentially, what happens to that coffee after it's washed is it's dried out and then it's prepared for export. So it gets reduced moisture content, so much lower than 20%. Then finally it gets bagged up and ready to send around the world. And due to that drying, the shelf life of green coffee is actually quite a long time. So it's a product that can last quite a bit. And for us as a roastery, this is the sort of shelf life that we're used to dealing with green coffee. So we're going out and finding coffee direct, we're importing it, we usually get it pretty quickly, so within a 3-month period. And then from that point where it's been picked, we know that we've got about another 3 months or 6 months on top of that to try and get through the stock. That's pretty common for us, it's a very long time. But for you guys dealing with the roasted product, that time frame's a little bit different. So what are some of the ideas you've heard about how long we've got to use coffee? We have forever, we have weeks, we have months, how long have we got?
We sort of heard that once it's been roasted, it was the best time to use it. So in that 2 to 4 week period, we'd look on the pack of the date that was roasted, and then it was 3 or 4 weeks in that middle.
Yeah, that's pretty close. Yeah, most people will tell you to try to use it within a month,
right?
And then probably not in that first week.
Yes.
And that's pretty close to what we say.
Yeah.
Try to
Sometimes to give the lot.
Sorry, man.
The coffee beans need sometimes after they get roasted to get
To harvest that.
to get the lot to like they need some time
Oh, they do. Like time to rest. And we call that degassing.
Yes.
Yes, they need to release all the carbon dioxide that's inside. So yeah, that's what that first week is all about. So this is our guideline for people to use our coffee. We suggest that they're ordering it when it's fresh, they're aging it to the age where they get the best results, and then they're trying to use it before it gets too old. And there's really good reasons for that. We'll go through some of those now. We find that in the first week of using coffee, while it's really, really fresh and it's still going through that degassing process, so letting out some of the carbon dioxide inside, we get some issues with how the coffee tastes and how it behaves. So to give you a bit of background on why it has that carbon dioxide, because it's a plant, that carbon dioxide is just generally there, it's part of its content. And the roasting process forms a lot of cracks and fissures in the coffee, and as a result of the expansion of coffee during roasting, it starts to release that gas immediately after. It's also got to do with the breakdown of some carbohydrates inside the coffee as well that releases more CO2. So that's a really intense thing that happens over about a 1 week period. And while that's happening, we get results like this. So we notice that our crema is really gassy and bulky. So you guys know what crema is? You guys know what crema is? Right, so you know when you see an espresso and it's got that foam on top? That's crema. So that's an emulsification of oil and gas and the coffee in the brewing process. So when coffee is really, really fresh, we notice that it's really bulky. So there's a lot of crema. And why do we think that is? Why would you have a lot of crema while it's fresh? What would that have to do with?
Gas.
Gas. Yeah, so more gas content, more crema. And by the same token, the older the coffee gets and the less gas it has, the less crema in the cup as well, for the same reason. So on account of all that gas being released during the brewing process, it often makes it really hard to get a thorough extraction. So the coffee often expands really quickly, quite a lot. That can create some channeling issues for us. And we also seem to get really acidic results. There's just so much acidity in coffee that's naturally occurring. We need to age it out so some of that can actually decay a little before it becomes a bit more balanced. So that's why we don't really use coffee in the first week. And most of the time what we have to do to overcome this is make changes to our dosage and our grind setting. So people usually use less coffee. They might grind finer. Some people go the opposite way. But what we found through a bit of testing is that when coffee's fresher, it's harder to extract content. So we need to do things to get it away from that acidic sort of taste profile and extract more, get it towards a more balanced profile. So it is possible to use coffee in that first week and get really great results, but obviously you have to fiddle around with it a little bit. It's still a little bit inconsistent, and most people find that they're not too happy with the results. That's a funny face. So that's week 1. That's why we say rest it for a week, essentially. And by the time you get to week 2, things are starting to look a little bit better. So the crema looks pretty normal. Things just look thick and rich, like the normal espresso that we've been used to seeing. Flavor-wise, it's much more balanced, and we get more consistent results because we don't have all that gas, we don't have that crazy expansion. So for the most part, much easier to use. It still tastes pretty fresh, very consistent, and generally everyone's pretty happy using it in that time frame. So finally, when that coffee starts to age, some of these things change. So we notice it gets a little bit thinner, a little bit more watery. We've lost a little bit of flavour potential there. So we start to get a thinner body. And we also find that as it ages, it's easier to remove content. So that means that if you kept the same grind setting from week 1 to week 3, you'd start to find that it over-extracts, or it starts to get to the end of the extraction a lot sooner. So again, we have to make some parameter changes here. So it's generally okay, we can still use the coffee. It just gets some symptoms of its age, it's not very complex. We usually find there's not much crema and the body's thin, but it's also not the end of the world. We usually get pretty consistent pours. We can still get a great flavour profile through making some parameter adjustments, and it might taste okay. But for the most part, we try to use coffee up in that 3rd week before it starts to age too much and be really hard to work with. So guys, this is in a nutshell what we're suggesting. People buy it in the 1st week, use it in the 2nd week, and try to finish using it in the 3rd week. And what you'll find is that every coffee behaves a little bit differently in that regard. Some coffees might be great at 5 days, some might be great at 12 days, and then you have like a 5-day window where it's perfect. The best thing to do is get a batch of coffee and try it out at different ages and see what works the best. And then this is what we've come up with, just to standardise the whole thing and say more or less most coffees behave that way. How does that sit with you guys? Agreeable? Any questions? Beautiful. Alright, so let's fly through. Storage is really, really simple. When we store coffee, we need to avoid heat, air, and moisture. Those are 3 things which decay coffee a little bit faster, and moisture obviously starts a brewing process with coffee. So if we can avoid hitting coffee with those things before we brew it, we're guaranteed to get good standardised results, really reliable results. So to go into a bit of detail, heat accelerates the snailling process with coffee. So all those volatiles inside coffee, if we reheat them, we destroy them or we change them a little bit. So that kind of ruins our time frame, that 3-week period that you've got to use coffee. It turns to a very short amount of time if you're not storing coffee correctly. So from a storage point of view, we just keep it out of the way of hot equipment, direct sunlight, pretty simple. So a nice dark cupboard, and the lower part of the building is usually pretty good. And from a brewing point of view, because our equipment is very, very hot, we just need to work quickly. That's going to affect it as well, especially since we've ground up the coffee. It's going to be more susceptible to heat affecting it. So we'll talk about that a little bit more over there, but that's a really important part of the brewing process. So air, similar story to heat, also affects the staling process. For us with storage, it just means that if we've opened a bag of coffee, we want to put that coffee, after we finish using it at the end of the day, we want to take the coffee back out of the hopper, put it back in the bag, and then we'll get good use out of it the next day. It also means that we need to be aware during the brewing process that we need to grind coffee immediately before use. So we can't grind a whole bunch of coffee and then just kind of wait for customers to come along. Why do you think that would be? What would be happening?
Yeah, once it's not fresh, I mean, you don't have a hopper full of, or a chamber full of grind.
Yeah. So it's going to start going stale, it's going to change a few things. So it starts behaving a little bit like older coffee.
Yeah.
So, which doesn't necessarily mean it's going to taste terrible, but it will change. It's going to be inconsistent. And then after about 40 minutes, the oil within coffee starts to go rancid. So if you're doing it all day, it starts to become a bit of an issue with the flavour of the coffee too. So that's just a good general guideline. The equipment we're using today grinds on demand. So we'll be trying to keep things as fresh as possible today. Now the last thing here is moisture. So in a nutshell, moisture and coffee mixed together, we get a brewing process occurring. So with storage, we just make sure we don't store it in the refrigerator. That attracts condensation, that creates some problems for us. And it's probably more relevant for home users than it is for you guys working in cafes or looking to work in cafes. Don't store it in a swimming pool, same sort of logic. With brewing, we need to keep all of our equipment really clean and dry before we dose the coffee. So with our portafilter, we wipe it out first. We just make sure that we're doing the right thing there, and we'll get more consistent results. And this is the last point about moisture. The air content, the moisture content in the air generally affects the brewing process too. So you'll find that your grinder might need to be changed throughout the day depending on how much it heats up, depending on whether you've opened your door or whether you've turned on the air conditioner. So there's not much we can do about that. We can't be like trying to go finer. It doesn't really work that way. But we can really just pay attention to what we're doing right in front of us, and that'll give us all the information we need to make some of those changes. But that's the reason for it. It's not really a static thing. It's a moving target. We always have to try to hit it. So that's pretty much it as far as storage goes. Any questions about that? Any comments? Everyone find that agreeable? Very good. So that's pretty much it as far as those things go. So what we might do is jump up on the machines, and if you just want to leave stuff here, we'll head back to that area and I'll move on to the next part. All right.